So last time we were learning, we started with the Aggadah of Horman, and now we're moving on to a little bit of a different sort of set of Aggadahs, which is welcome everybody. There's Mar Makomos in the middle. So today we're going to be learning one of the stories, basically, which are a set of Aggadah called Saba de Beatuna. So basically, Rabbi Yehoshua, who's one of the sages of the Talmud, who's a Tana, he was basically challenged to a debate by the wise men of Athens. So the wise men of Athens, the Saba de Beatuna, we can imagine, some people who are knowledgeable about history may know, maybe perhaps who some of these people are. I don't know if it necessarily mentions anyone by name, but Saba de Beatuna, the wise men of Athens, the Greek sort of philosophers, and they challenged Rabbi Yehoshua to debate sort of the worldview of Judaism versus the worldview of Greek society, really Roman society too, and that was their challenge to him. So the Gemara records a series. They're almost like riddles. The wise men of Athens, these philosophers, would ask Rabbi Yehoshua a question, and he would respond, and it's very the message that they're each saying are both very convoluted riddles that make very little sense to the untrained eye. So we'll try to unpack perhaps one of them tonight, and really using again the similar method that we used last time of that really the Vilna Gaon presents to us, of sort of using other chazals around the different svarim of our sages to shed light on what's going on here, because it's very vague and very convoluted. So let's see. So we're in source 1. It's the one with the box around it so everyone can see. That's where we're really going to be focused, and everything else is sort of be brought to shed light on the main text. So again, Rabbi Yehoshua has traveled. He went to this Athenian sort of institution, a university, and this is the debate they had. So the Saba de Beatuna, they said, Hahu gavra de ozil ubai itto, volo yahavule. So you have a certain person, and he goes and he is seeking a wife. He goes to a certain person to ask for maybe his daughter's hand in marriage. Volo yahavule, but he wasn't successful. He wasn't successful at winning this woman's hand. Maybe the family wasn't happy with him. We'll see. So my chazile de azil hecha de medalu mine. Where does he get it in his mind? How does he see? Why would he think to now go to a higher level family and ask for their daughter's hand in marriage? If it didn't work at this level, it won't work at that level. Shachal sichta. So Rabbi Yehoshua responds in really by showing them something. He takes a peg. Datzala tatoi. He tries to stick it in low down on the wall. Low oil doesn't go in. Le'ele. Sticks it up higher in the wall. And it went in. Amar. So he said, you see from what I just did, the person in our story as well. Hai nami misrame bas mazle. This person also, when he goes higher up, he'll also find his bas mazel, his shidduch. So what exactly is going on here? So the mashal that the metaphor the Saba de Beatuna are using is very significant. They're talking about the metaphor of a person looking for his bride, his mate to be. So one of the examples we have, well, let me preface, the concept of yuchus isn't really something we're used to nowadays. The concept that a person that it matters sort of the social standing of the person you marry. We've sort of live in a democratic culture where these things sort of, what did you say? Age? Lineage. Yeah. Yichus. Yeah, yichus, lineage, sorry. So these are things we're not exactly used to. We sort of live in a democratic age where these things aren't what we talk about anymore. But back then, and even in some circles nowadays, it still matters where the mishpacha person comes from, where they can sort of track themselves back to. So this person who's looking for a wife wants to marry into a good family, a family of high rank. So that's the mashal, that's the metaphor that we're talking about here. Fine. So we see we're talking about a person seeking a mate. So where does this come up in Chazal? One of the most common places we see it is the concept, what I'll read, you see source 2. So the famous pasuk, everyone knows this pasuk. It says, Torah tziva lanu Moshe. Right? So Chazal make a drasha, trying to prove something. I'm not going to get into it now. But they say, Torah tziva lanu Moshe, Morasha kilas Yaakov. That's the pasuk. Everyone knows that pasuk, that verse. Chazal darsh, and they say, Al tikri Morasha, Ella mi'urasa. So the Torah is called an inheritance, right? The Torah was commanded to us by Moshe as an inheritance. So the sages darshan, they make they bring out a certain depth to what the verse is alluding to. That it means al tikre morasha. Don't call it just an inheritance. Rather, it's coming to hint to us a point. Ela me'urasa. The Torah is considered erusin in halachic terminology. The English would sort of be engagement, but it really is much more than that. It really means marriage. The Torah is called married, meaning the Jewish people are called that they're married to the Torah. The Torah is called our betrothed. That's what the Torah is known as. So we see that this is actually something, the Medrash, I put it also in source 2, but it's a different source from Yalkut Shmaini. So it says again, Al tikri morasha ela me'urasa. Shehatayra me'ureses he li Yisrael. The Torah is betrothed, it's married li Yisrael, to the Jewish people. Uke'esh ish la'ovdei alilim. To the extent that we Chazal see the Torah as if it's a married woman with respect to the nations of the world. So we see that this concept, the way Chazal are talking about a person looking for a shidduch, is actually an allusion to the Torah, to Kabbalah's Torah. So I'll develop this idea a little more. So everyone knows, hopefully, this Medrash, a very famous Medrash. So when Hashem was looking to try to give the Torah over to a nation, surprisingly enough, he didn't go straight to the Jewish people. Very surprising thing. So I'll read, if you see in source 3, it's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah. So there's a pasuk, it says, Vayomer Hashem misinai ba v'zerech miseir lamoim hofia mehar paran. Basically it says that Hashem has shown his light from Seir, which is where Esav lives. Hofia mehar paran. He revealed himself from the mountain of Paran. So again, these are not Jewish places. So the Gemara asks the obvious question: my boy b'seir, my boy b'paran. What is God doing in these places? Why God visits the, God visits the Vatican. This would set us a little bit. We wouldn't really understand what's going on. So, Amar Rabbi Yehoshua, Melamed shehechzira HaKadosh Baruch Hu al kol uma v'lashon v'lo kiblua. God went around to every nation and asked, do you want to accept my Torah? They said no. Ad sheyavo etel Yisrael v'kiblua. Until he went to the Jewish people and they accepted the Torah. So I'm not going to read this whole thing over here. The next source, in source 4, I want to just bring it down because you sort of have to when you're learning this, but I'm not going to quote the whole thing. It talks out the different dialogues that God had with the nations that he went to. It said first he went to Edom, to the descendants of Esav. And they asked what's written in the Torah. It says don't murder. He said, don't murder. Our whole essence is murdering. What do you mean? We live by our sword. We love making wars. We love fighting. We can't accept the Torah. He went to Moav. I think it's Moav. Moav. Amon Moav. And they said, what's written in it? He said, don't commit adultery. So what do you mean? Our whole essence is adultery. Our great grandfather Lot, he obviously we know what happened with Lot. We can't accept the Torah. It's not for us. He went to Yishmael, our cousins, and they asked what's written in the Torah. And he said, don't steal. No, not for us. It says Yishmael is a para Adam. We see that nowadays. So that's not for us. Until finally he went to Klal Yisrael. And what did Klal Yisrael say? Nasav and Nishma. So we see that the Jewish people accepted the Torah, something that the rest of the nations weren't willing to do. The other nations had different conditions to their acceptance of the Torah, but not the Jewish people. Fine. So the Sabbath de Be'atuna, back to the top. So they're saying a mashal. They say a metaphor. Hahu gavra de azulu boy itza. Person's looking for a wife. So where does he go? He goes somewhere. He meets a certain girl. He meets the family, but he ultimately gets rejected. So the Sabbath de Be'atuna are saying, look what happened. Hashem Kaviyachol went to the different nations of the world, specifically to Esav, to Edom, first, and asked, do you want to accept the Torah? They said no. They said we don't want to accept the Torah. So would it be logical then for God to go to a higher level nation? Of course not. The Sabbath de Be'atuna, these wise men of Athens, they wanted to prove a point. They wanted to prove a point to Rabbi Yehoshua. Clearly, the descendants of Esav are on a higher level. Because look, God went to them first in order to give them the Torah. And if we rejected the Torah, it cannot be that you, the Jewish people, are on a higher level because God went to you after us. That's what they say. Which really needs a very strong response. We have to see what Rabbi Yehoshua's response is. But this seems to be a very strong claim that the Sabbath de Be'atuna are making to Rabbi Yehoshua. Now, let's just get into this claim a little bit more. There's really two aspects to the claim. One aspect of the claim is we must be a higher level nation in order to have been offered the Torah first. And you, the Jewish people, must be a lower level nation because we see God didn't offer you the Torah first. You were second choice. Right? No one wants to be, they say stories sometimes of, later people, engagements break up and there's a lot of times very negative feelings between the two sides. And even after they find their respective, matches, there's a lot of negative feelings. And if someone knows when they go to the next, they finally become engaged to someone else, but that girl knows that really they're the second choice, she's not going to be very happy. So are we as Klal Yisrael the second choice? That's that as the Sabbath de Be'atuna claimed. So we have to see, does this claim hold? There's also another claim that we're going to get into as well, which is Sabbath de Be'atuna their wisdom of choice is not the wisdom of the Torah. When their ancestor Esav rejected the Torah, they understand he was really doing the right thing. So they're claiming really, as a greater nation, we did the right thing by not accepting the Torah, which is also a very interesting claim, which maybe I'll try to explain. It's a hard claim to analyze, but that's also part of the dialogue back and forth here, because they can't admit to Rabbi Yehoshua that we did the wrong thing in rejecting the Torah. That's not tenable for their side to stay true. Otherwise, they should come and accept the Torah now. Okay, fine. So maybe I'll just explain where exactly is this. Where are they coming from, Sabbath Atuna, that they can really rationalize why they rejected the Torah? This is a little bit of a deep concept. Hopefully, some of the participants here are familiar a little bit with the Ramchal from Rabbi Spivak. I know he teaches Ramchal. It's very special to him. So maybe you guys are aware of some of these concepts. When God created the world, there were two aspects to God's creation of the world. One aspect of creation was that God wanted to give over and bestow goodness upon humanity as much as possible. On the other hand, if that goodness was bestowed for free, it wouldn't be a complete goodness. Rather, we have to work for our bread, essentially. Otherwise, we would feel a certain embarrassment upon receiving good. And if we could work for our good through service of God, we would become the masters of that good. That was the intention that God had in creating the world. Now, when God gave us over the ability to work for our living, essentially, his desire was that we should, to a certain extent, become independent. That we wouldn't have to rely on him completely for the good that we're receiving. Rather, we would work for that good. So the Sabbath Atuna rationalized to themselves. They said, we shouldn't accept the Torah, because by accepting the Torah, we'll lose out on the opportunity to gain and achieve wisdom by ourselves. We won't achieve the full same level of independence of Hashem that we could. We'll perforce be dependent on Hashem, because all of the wisdom that we'll gain is from the Torah. We won't be able to say any of the wisdom is really ours. That perhaps was the claim the Sabbath Atuna would make. How they can possibly rationalize not accepting the Torah. So I think it's a very deep point. So if anyone has questions, please tell me. But that I think that's how I don't want to go so much into it, but I just wanted to make that point clear, because I think this is something that has to be explained. Now, clearly they're wrong, because we as human beings, without Kabbalah Torah, without the revelation of Torah, we have no ability really to achieve transcendent wisdom. The only opportunity we have to attaining any semblance of transcendent wisdom is through Torah and through the Messiah that we receive through Chazal. So the Greek philosophers, the Sabbath Atuna, were mistaken in that aspect. They thought we can achieve through our own wisdom the same heights as the wisdom of the Torah. But they were wrong. The wisdom of the Torah, in as much as it's a divine wisdom, cannot be achieved by the human brain alone, as the philosophers wanted to suggest, only through the Torah itself. Through working to understand the Torah itself could you do it. Okay. So we've explained what the claim of the wise men of Athens was. Hahu gavr de azulu boy itzo. He wants to marry this girl. Volo yahavule. I'm back at the top on the sheet for the boxed source, just explaining where we are in the story. So hahu gavr de azulu boy itzo volo yahavule, and they don't agree to the match with him. My chazile de azul heichad malule, heichad de midalu mine, to a place that's higher up than where he was originally seeking. So now we have to work maybe a little bit to understand what was Rabbi Yehoshua's response to this very bold claim that the Sabbath Be'atuna were making? Again, they're claiming clearly it's the descendants of Esav who are a higher level nation than the Jewish people. Because the Jewish people, you see, you were God's second choice, not first choice. So what did Rabbi Yehoshua say? Again, still over there. He was shakel sichta. He took a peg. Dotza letatoi lo all. It didn't go in at the bottom. Le'ela, he went up now. Then it was all. Amar hai nami misrami ba mazli. So this guy too, he went up and he found his bas mazli. He found his shidduch. He found his beshert. So there's one of the Gemaras that the Vilna Gaon brings here. It's in source 5. So the pasuk from Koheles, Afu pasuk v'darish, Divrei Chachamim kidrabainos ukemishmaros netuim. The words of the Chacham, the Torah, are like goads and like firmly set pegs. So we see the Torah as they're saying a mashal, the Torah to a goad, to an ox goad, it keeps an ox going straight, and like pegs that are very firmly implanted in the ground. So lama nimshalu divrei Torah ledarban. Why were the words of Torah made a metaphor? They made a metaphor of the Torah to a darban, to a goad, to an ox goad. Lomer lecha. It teaches you the following thing. Ma darbon ze mechavin es hapara letalme lehotzi chaim leolam. Just as an ox goad, it keeps an ox going straight. So after Torah mechavnin es lomdehen midarche misa ledarche chaim. So Torah does a very important thing. It says really that just as an ox, what does an ox do? An ox plows. He makes sort of these areas in the field where there's fertile land to plant your crop. And thereby which the ox, in a certain sense, is very involved in sustaining the world. Believe it or not, the ox provides us with our food. Maybe now we have tractors and other things doing this type of job. But it used to be that the ox, the beast of burden, would be the one to do this very heavy labor and thereby provide food for the world. So the Torah too, the people who learn the Torah we say that Yistachel Baraisu Bari Alma, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to create the world, he looked into the Torah. And since then, since Klal Yisrael were given over the Torah really is the life force of our existence. It's like, to borrow a mashal from our metaphor, from our modern worldview. If a person has a computer and they take a wire, plug it into the wall, and plug it into the computer needs that wire. Otherwise, there's not going to be any power for the computer. So in the same way, the Torah is that source of power for the world that keeps the world going. And according to the amount of Torah being brought into the world, to the extent, the life force of the world will increase. So that's why the Torah is compared to an ox goad. Just the ox goad allows for life, for sustenance to be brought into the world, so too the Torah. Okay, I'm still in source 5, because there's another comparison the Torah makes. So this Gemara Chagiga makes. So it says, on the last line, it says, Ima darban ze metaltel. The darban, when it comes to the ox goad, it's something movable. It's not set. So af divrei Torah metaltelin. Maybe you'd think also Torah isn't something that's set. It's not something firmly rooted. You can take it to where you want. Talmud loymar mishmarus. Therefore, the pasuk says that the Torah is also compared to mishmarus, to firmly set pegs. The understanding of this, the Torah is compared to a firmly set peg. The Torah has very strict guidelines about the way a person is supposed to learn, ideally. That if the Torah is not learned in this way, we'll maybe talk out some of these things. If the Torah is not learned in this way, it can lead a person maybe to even become damaged by learning the Torah. Whereas the Torah is learned in this way, the pre-prescribed way that Chazal tell us, then the Torah can be a life-giving sustenance. There's this famous Gemara that says, if a person is Zaycha, he merits, the Torah for him is a Samachayim. But if he doesn't, then it's a Samamaves. It's almost like a poison. So the Torah has very specific prerequisites. Let's see source 6. So it tells a story. There was a Roman matron, basically a lady. What's the female version of Lord? A lady, fine. So Matrona Acha Sha'ala is Rabbi Yossi Bar Chalafta. She asked a question, Rabbi Yossi Bar Chalafta. Amrle, Ma'uden Shenamar, you have Chachmasa L'Chachamim. So it says, Pasuk in Daniel says, you give Chachma to Chachamim. She asked, Lo havatzari kra l'meimar ela yahav Chachmasa L'lo Chachamim. She's a very obvious question. She said, why are you supposed to give Chachma to Chachamim? Shouldn't you give Chachma to fools who don't yet possess Chachma? Very obvious question. Amar la mashal. So he said to her mashal. Im yavo etzlecha shnei bnei adam lilvos mimcha mamon. Let's say two people come to you. They want a loan. Ech mehen ashir ve'ech mehen ani. So one's an ashir, one's a rich person, and one's a poor person. Some of you guys all would think about it. Who would you give the loan to? The poor person or the rich person? So anyone who's ever had to take out a mortgage knows that if you're a rich person, I've never taken out a mortgage, but I've heard that if you're a rich person, it's much easier to get a loan. Now, isn't that ironic? Why are the banks giving loans to the rich people? Why not also to the poor people? So obviously it's a very bad question. It's obvious why the banks would only give loans to wealthy people and not to poor people, because those are the people they can trust to pay back the loan. Yeah. So le'eze mehen at malve la'asher lani. Who are you going to give it to? Amar la la'asher. Obviously, I'm going to give it to the asher, to the rich person. Amar la lama. Why is that so? Why are you going to give it to the rich person? Amar la she'im avad ha'asher mamayni yesh lo mehechan yifaral. If the asher takes the loan and then goes ahead and loses the money, okay, well, he has a whole bank account from which to pay me back with. I don't have to worry about my money. But let's say the ani, the poor person, is irresponsible with the money, he loses it. So may I parley? Where is he going to pay me from? He doesn't have any other money. This is his only money. Amr he said back to her, do you hear what your mouth is saying? Let's speak out what's going to happen. Let's say HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives Chachma to the foolish people. Hayu yoshvin v'hoigin ba bebate kisos ubate teatreos ubate merchotzos. And if you give wisdom to the fools, what's going to happen? They're going to go to their theaters. They're going to go to their bathhouses. They're going to go to the restrooms, and that's where they're going to deal with that's where they're going to deal in Chachma. That's where they're going to discuss their Chachma. In the theaters and these places which aren't the highest of places. So this is what Hashem was thinking also when he gave us the Torah. Ela nasan HaKadosh Baruch Hu Chachma Chachamim. Rather, what happened? Hashem gave Chachma to the wise people. And they go, and where do they learn Torah? They learn Torah in the base medrash, in the shul. And they come to know understanding and wisdom. The concept here is, when you're going to decide whom to give your chachma and your wisdom to, it has to be someone who is going to appreciate that chachma, that wisdom. Because chachma and wisdom is power. When a person has an understanding of the nature of the world, what God's role is in the world and what he wants our role to be in the world, that's a very, very powerful thing. And if that wisdom was to be put in the hands of people of low stature, that can come to damage. They can become damaged. The world can become damaged. So maybe with that, we understand at least what Rabbi Yehoshua's response was. We're going back to source 1 at the top. It says, Shakal Sikta, he took a Sikta, he took his peg. Again, the peg, we're saying now, represents the Torah. So Hashem is trying to give the Torah to one of the nations. Datzul Tatoi, puts it into the bottom, low all, but it doesn't go in. The people that he tried giving it to at the bottom, they weren't on the level to be able to appreciate this wisdom. So they couldn't accept it. They didn't have value for it, so they couldn't accept it. La'ela, then it was all. Amar Hainami Misrami Bal Mazle. The Jewish people, when Hashem gave them the Torah, their response, like we said, was Nasa v'nishma. We're going to commit to doing the Torah, and then we'll listen, we'll learn, we'll try to understand what it means. But there was a complete acceptance even before knowing even what was written in the Torah. We know that this is God's wisdom. We know that this is the highest possible wisdom and chachma there is. So, of course, we're committed to learning. We understand the value of wisdom. We understand the value of Torah. There's nothing more valuable. So, when Hashem tried giving the Jewish people, it went right in because really the Torah was destined for the Jewish people. Torah was one of the things, and Klal Yisrael was actually one of the things created even before, you understand what this means, before Brias HaOlam, before the world was created. The Torah was there. A few other things too. We say that Kudsha Brechu, Baraisa, Klal Yisrael are all one. That there's a complete oneness. You have to understand what it means, but there's a complete oneness between the Torah, between Hashem and the Jewish people. This means to say, Bas Mazle means it's who the Torah was destined for. The Torah was really destined for the Jewish people. The Jewish people who were able to come to appreciate or to have really an inherent appreciation for wisdom. That's who the Torah was destined for. And that's why the Torah was known as Bas Mazle. So with the appreciation for what Chachma is, that's how Klal Yisrael basically is the destined one for the Torah. Now, I want to speak out maybe perhaps just a little bit what that means exactly, that we value the Torah and we value wisdom. So, famous, I don't know if it's famous, but I've heard it, so I assume it's famous. One of the philosophers, I think, of England, you might know him. I don't remember the name offhand, but he was a very famous philosopher. He taught ethics, and he was teaching university. It was found that he was having an affair. Not sure if the student or someone else, but they found it. So the university administration came to him, very perplexed. They said, "Professor, aren't you an ethics professor?" I said, "Yeah, I also teach geometry, but you don't ask me why I'm not a polygon." So maybe you've heard this before.
He's a polygon of virtue.
What did you say?
He's a polygon of virtue.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Correct.
So
He was polygamous.
very good. Very good. So when a person is involved in wisdom, there's almost a expectation, or at least there should be an expectation, that whatever he takes from that wisdom is something he's going to live by. The Torah, which tells us about the loftiest of ideals, not only in ethics, but in every aspect of life, and how we're supposed to act, in the most mundane part of our lives, how we're supposed to eat, how we're supposed to sleep, what we do when we're involved in going about our daily needs for parnasa, even how we use the bathroom, all of these things are dictated to us by the Torah. The Torah is something that totally that tells us completely how we're supposed to live our lives at every single turn. And when a person learns Torah al manas lamed, that's considered to be almost a prerequisite to him being able to learn Torah. So there's a lot of different aspects of things we can learn in the Torah. We could learn proper midos. We can learn halacha. But there's also more things a person can learn that are deeper things. Machshava, mysticism, all of these things. And all of these ultimately are teaching us how we're supposed to relate to Hashem, how we as limited people can have a relationship with God. The difference between us and the Greek philosophers is that not only do we engage with the Chachma, but after engaging with the Chachma, we ask ourselves, what way can I implement this in my life to make myself a better person, to improve the world? What is this supposed to teach me about what my values are supposed to be, that it could have an actual lasting impact? We asked, I think, a very important question at the beginning, and it's something I want to come back to. Why was it that when Hashem was coming to give the Torah, first he went to the Goyim? Something that seems to make very, very little sense.
There were more of them.
There are more of them?
Yeah.
Could be. That could be a good thought. So, I think it relates to what we're talking about right now. Hashem wanted his wisdom to pervade reality, to totally come down into reality. The Goyim, who may be, perhaps we said, on a lower level, more physically engaged in the world, have different values from the Jewish people. In as much as they were on a lower spiritual level, were more engaged in the physical world. If it could be, Kadosh Baruch Hu understood, it's not to say that he didn't also want to give the Torah to the Jewish people too, but this that he went to them first and this that he offered them the Torah is to teach us, it's a lesson to really to us, that the Torah is supposed to totally encompass our lives, from the most lofty part of our life to the most mundane. Because we see that God wanted to give the Torah to the lowest of nations, to Edom, our terrible enemy, Edom. Because God wanted to have his wisdom, the wisdom of the Torah, come down into the world as far down as possible. So it could be that's the reason why Hashem first went to the nations of the world before coming to the Jewish people.
He was trying to expedite the coming of Mashiach.
That's true. Yeah.
Make it happen sooner.
Right. So that's our stories for today. Again, the Sabbath Be'atuna. Just to review what we said. Again, the Sabbath Be'atuna were making a very strong claim against Rabbi Yehoshua. They were saying, look, God gave the Torah first he came to the nations of the world before coming to the Jewish people. It must be that we're really on a higher level. Because if it would not make sense for the Jewish people that they're on a higher level because God came to us first. So the response of Rabbi Yehoshua was no. He may have tried to put the peg in there first, but ultimately, the Bas Mazel, the nation most fitting for the Torah, was on a higher level, the Jewish people. And we're explaining the reason why God may have gone first to the nations of the world is to teach us a very important lesson, that Torah is meant to pervade reality, to come down into reality and be something that we can live in the most mundane sense. Obviously, anything we're living when it comes to Torah, if we're living by it, we elevate the mundane. So that's the idea with this Aggadah, Sabbath Be'atuna, and Rabbi Yehoshua. There's a lot more debates in the Gemara. Maybe we'll go through some of them. We'll see. I'm not sure what the plan is yet, but I'll try to figure that out. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys tonight.
Yeah.